Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. It is Tuesday, April 22nd, 2019. My name is Morgan Colby. Right across from me, I got Rick Lemon.
What's up, y'all?
And we have a great show prepared for you today. We are in a series called All That Glitters, and we're in part 2 of running backs, where we're going to break down the top 8 to 15 finishers from the running back position in 2018 and discuss if they truly were good or just a flash in the pan. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter, at the FF Champs, Instagram, at the Fantasy Champions, and go to facebook.com/the Fantasy Champions and give us a like. Subscribe wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. We're also on YouTube, so be sure to go check out YouTube, subscribe, do your thing, leave a comment, leave a review on this podcast wherever you're listening, and share this podcast with your friends. Well, let's get to the news. Jordan Howard traded to the Eagles for a 2020 sixth round pick.
It's your guy.
That's my boy. I got Duke Johnson. Not Duke Johnson. I got Jordan Howard undies on.
Oh, yeah. You guys can't see it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, he's got Jordan Howard underwear on.
I'm looking at life through the Jordan Howard glasses.
I think that's Jordan Howard socks you got on, too.
Dude. Jordan Howard is my guy. Take everything I say about Jordan Howard and throw it in the garbage. I really like Jordan Howard. Him going to the Eagles was one of the destinations that I wanted. Hit that and the Oakland Raiders. I wanted him to go somewhere where I knew he was going to be the feature back. He's going to be the number one guy. Corey Clement's not stealing snaps from Jordan Howard or Josh Adams. So I think Jordan Howard's actually going to be relatively decent, but it's going to be kind of confusing because they're either going to draft somebody, and then now there's rumors floating around that Duke Johnson is reportedly he asked for a trade, and he's in
Eagles are one of the teams.
Eagles are one of the teams that are interested, and so it's an interesting situation for Jordan Howard where if Duke Johnson goes or they draft a running back, Jordan Howard's definitely not going to be a guy that
then you take off the underwear and socks at that point.
No, they're staying.
Oh,
is Jordan Howard a guy you want to draft? Is Jordan Howard a guy you want to draft? Period.
Yeah, I'm not even the biggest Jordan Howard fan like you. Believe it or not, I actually have what's that? I think it's Patrick Mahomes underwear on. But no, I'm not. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of Jordan Howard. Yeah. But I like to look at opportunity in fantasy football and situations. Yeah. And if everything stays the same, Jordan Howard has a very good opportunity, and he's in a very good situation with the Eagles. He's going to get carries. He's going to be the lead back. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of Jordan Howard. Yeah. However, if you look in previous years, he has been able to carry a backfield by himself.
Yeah.
So you look at Philadelphia, he's going to be the guy. He's going to get the carries, and I think he'll be able to carry the backfield.
Definitely.
And right now, he's going in the 8th round. I don't think that's a bad spot for him at all. I'm taking him if he's there in the 8th round.
For me, I think, I don't know, Jordan Howard, if he's there in the 8th round, I'll definitely take a look at him. It depends on who else is on the board. But for Jordan Howard, if Duke Johnson is there, he gets traded or they draft a running back, I'm definitely afraid of taking Jordan Howard. In 2016, he finished as the 9th best running back in half PPR. In 2017, he finished as the 10th best running back in half PPR. So the numbers are there, the potential is there. The talent is there. The reps are there. We just have to figure out if Jordan Howard is actually going to be worth it. The Eagles also did a little maneuvering. They traded a 6th-round pick to get Jordan Howard, and if he leaves the Eagles after his contract expires because he's on his rookie deal, the Eagles would get a compensatory pick that would be better than the 6th-round pick for 2020. I think it's like a 4th-round pick or something like that, 3rd or 4th.
That's really nice.
That's sly for the Eagles.
That's a
sliding
move.
Right in there. But Jordan Howard, a guy that I don't even know if I want him on my fantasy team.
Oh, you do. Stop it.
He burned me last year,
and
I still love him. Lions signed running back C.J. Anderson, so all the Todd Gurley haters who think he's going
Why
to
are you looking at me?
Directly. All the people who thought C.J. Anderson was going to somehow steal snaps from Todd Gurley can take a seat. Malcolm Brown is the backup running back for the Los Angeles Rams. So
You wanted to say St. Louis, didn't you?
yeah, I wanted to say St. Louis, and I held it. I just held my tongue. We don't need to create another jar for my stupid. The teams need to stop moving. Is what needs to happen.
If only.
But C.J. Anderson's not stealing snaps from Todd Gurley anymore. Todd Gurley is the feature back, and if anybody was concerned about Todd Gurley not being the feature back, this situation right here proves to me that Todd Gurley is going to get all the snaps next year. It's going to happen. Literally, the whole offseason has been filled with questions about Todd Gurley that get answered. Is Adam Whitworth going to return? Yes, he did. Offensive line stays. Is he okay? We find out about his knee injury, so that's a question answered, but it's not a very good one.
Yeah.
And now C.J. Anderson leaves, so it's clear that the Rams are moving forward with,
does that kind of
Todd Gurley as the number one?
Answer the question, though, about his knee injury?
Yeah.
With
I think
them not wanting to sign C.J. Anderson, does that answer the question that he's fine?
Yes. I think that people are very much overreacting about Todd Gurley. I posted that today, and I think that Todd Gurley he's not like some people are putting them 6th on their rankings. And
if Todd Gurley's sitting there at 6th in your league, start doing backflips.
Yeah, you just got like the 3rd best running back in fantasy football next year.
He could
finish 1 again if
people forget how if you listen to our show last week, realize how
dominant
good
he was.
He really was, right? And typically you in redraft leagues you'll take the guy number 1 who was the number 1 guy the previous year.
Right.
Todd Gurley's been the number 1 guy the last 2 years, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So
for him to fall this far down the board because of arthritis in his knee is absolutely crazy.
I think, should go number 1 in mostly. I mean, Barkley, I think at least 1 or 2.
I would go Barkley, Zeke, and then Gurley.
Okay.
He fell down my board a little bit because of the knee, but questions are being answered right now, and there's no reason to believe Todd Gurley is going to take a step
So
back.
what would you say if everything's been answered and they say the knee's like no concern and he looks like Todd Gurley from last year in the preseason?
Then he's number 1.
Okay.
He should be number 1. I think C.J. Anderson signing with the Lions is, in terms of the Lions.
Who cares?
Who cares?
Kerryon Johnson.
It's what is it? LeGarrette Blount.
Yeah,
that's their new Blunt.
He is. Does this concern you about Johnson a little bit?
Yeah, Kerryon Johnson. He's a guy I'm avoiding drafting just because the Lions have already said that they're going to go light on Kerryon Johnson's load. So.
I like Kerryon Johnson, but this does kind of concern me.
Yeah.
And considering he's getting taken in the 4th round right now, it's
a little concerning.
Yeah, I'm not taking him in the 4th round.
Yeah,
and I like him.
Avoid Kerryon Johnson. I like Kerryon, but it's going to take the Lions all year to figure out that C.J. Anderson's not the guy they should be using. Duke Johnson asked for a trade, as we said earlier. Houston, the Jets, and Philly are all teams that are interested. That would be disconcerting if he went to the Jets, because I think Adam Gase would probably start him more Le'Veon and give him 20 snaps, and Le'Veon Bell would get 5.
We saw last year with Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake. Yeah, I mean, I kind of hope he goes to the Texans out of those 3 teams because I don't really care about Lamar Miller anyway, fantasy-wise. Yeah. I'm not taking him. But if he does go to the Jets, that concerns me a little bit for Le'Veon Bell. Just a little bit. Yeah. Because I think he will get some snaps because it is Adam Gates. Yeah. If he goes to the Eagles, right? That was the 3rd team? Yeah. If he goes to the Eagles, that concerns me about Jordan Howard, definitely. But yeah.
Raiders signed running back Isaiah Crowell. This means absolutely nothing for the Raiders. This is one of those signings where you're like, people consistently try to dislike Isaiah Crowell. We all do. We hate Isaiah Crowell.
Poor man. Player. I mean,
he's not a good running back. He's not a good fantasy running back. But he has games where he performs well, and right now he's like the number 1 back in Oakland, unless Marshawn Lynch decides to come.
They're going to draft someone, I think.
They'll probably draft someone. But if Isaiah Crowell stays the main back, are you taking a flyer?
I mean, maybe, because just the situation is just amazing.
You did the same thing with Doug Martin last year.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Maybe avoid the Raiders running back situation.
Isaiah Crowell's in his head like, that's right. Now I'm the number 1 guy. I can finally get all the carries.
It's true.
Like a month later, they draft a running back in the first round.
Yeah, it's true.
Let's go. All that glitters.
So once again, today we are going to be talking about our 8 to 15 top finishing running backs from 2018. All these stats are based on half PPR. We're going to discuss the realities of running back finishes in 2018, and our goal is to help you look at last year and dissect last year's numbers and tell you if they will continue with that production next year. So let's get to it. The second half, finishing number 8, James White. This is an interesting... He finished 7 in PPR, 8.5 PPR, and I think he was like 9 or 10 in standard leagues. He had 233 fantasy points. His consistency rank was 10. He averaged 14.6 points a game, and his bust percentage was 37. Consistency rank of 10, so that's not bad, right around where he finished.
It's actually pretty solid.
It's pretty solid. The Patriots, do you want to hear this number that I was looking at today?
Yeah.
The Patriots led the league in RB targets. James White led the league in RB targets, and he had, I think it was 130 plus. Something right around.
Okay.
No, it might have been 120 plus targets. Out of the Patriots, 170 plus targets at the running back. Oh, that's crazy.
That is.
It's
that's
crazy.
Absolutely insane.
James White is a PPR running back dream, I guess.
In a full PPR league.
Yeah, he's crazy. The only thing James White does effectively is catch the football. He doesn't put much of anything on the ground. Like, what is he, a second, third down back, and all he does is catch for Tom Brady. When Tom Brady's main target is James White, that's what you get.
Well,
I don't like James White.
Okay.
Go ahead with what you were going to say.
Fantasy-wise or, like, just in general?
Fantasy-wise, I love James White for the Patriots.
Yeah. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
So originally, I think you're on the boat of you don't like James White, fantasy-wise.
Yeah.
I was kind of on that boat too. But what you just said is quite interesting, and it kind of made something click in my head a little bit. I still don't like James White, but is that going to change next year with throwing the football to running backs?
I think it's going to change, and here's why. No, I think the frequency at which Tom Brady throws the football to the running back position is not going to change. I think what's going to change is the amount the Patriots throw the football in general.
Okay.
And I think that's because the performance from the Patriots brought back Brandon Bolden. Watch out. The performance from Sony Michel last year in the postseason was really good.
Yeah.
And I think what they're trying to do is, you started to see signs of it in the regular season for the New England Patriots. They're starting to try to preserve Tom Brady for as long as they can. It's like they're putting that fine Egyptian perfume on him, trying to make him last as long as they can. I think that when you talk about the running game from the Patriots last year, I think you're going to see them run the ball for the first time in a long time, run the ball more than throw the ball in 2019. That sounds like a crazy thing for the Patriots, but if they get up early in games, they're going to run the football.
I don't disagree with that.
And James White's not going to be a part of that run.
So Sony Michel will obviously get more carries too, but then who's will they be giving Brandon Bolden carries? Or is he just a special teamer?
Do they still have Jeremy Hill?
I don't think so. I think it was a 1-year deal.
Okay. They might. I mean, they're still
Rex
not
Burkhead
even done.
isn't on the. Wait, Rex Burkhead is still on the team, isn't he?
Yeah, something like that. So there's a lot of running backs.
I forgot about Rex Burkhead.
We will talk about. No, actually, we won't talk about Sony Michel. So I'll bring it up now. The reason why I don't like James White in fantasy is simply because I don't trust any Patriots running backs. 1 week, James White could get 25 fantasy points just off receptions and like passing yards and like 2 touchdowns. The next week, he could be completely invisible. I hate Patriots running backs. I'm actually, at some point down the road, me and Rick will be doing a show on players to avoid, and I'm going to be avoiding James White and Sony Michel.
So
that is just me. I can't stand backfields that split snaps.
Welcome to the modern NFL, though.
It drives me crazy. Just give me running backs that are workhorses.
See, here's what I'll say about James White. If you're in a PPR league or half PPR and you're in a 12-team league,
yeah,
I do think he's a solid option still.
Right.
If you're in a standard league or 10-team half PPR, He's a little less of an option right now. He's going in the 10th round though. Would you take?
Oh yeah, well this is where that's where the what is it called? The risk equals the reward for me. Is that I don't really believe in James White, but do I have to bite the bullet a little bit and say he's a 10th round pick, and a guy who finished in the top 10 being a 10th round pick, is he worth it? I have to say yes. Like, if you're getting that on your team and he turns out to be the same guy he was last year, then you get a great value. And if he busts, it's all right because it's a 10th round pick.
I think where he is, though, in the 10th round is good. He shouldn't be anything higher.
I agree.
I don't really
100%.
think he should be lower either.
Like, if people were drafting James White, like he should... Not like he should be drafted, but like how they would draft somebody in that same conversation.
He's going to be one of the guys, I think, in many drafts that is going to go earlier than he should.
Yeah.
Because people are going to see what he did last year, and they're going to be like, wow, this is a steal. I can get him in the 7th round.
Once the people who don't understand what's going on come in.
Right. You shouldn't.
Yeah, no.
I do think he will get a lot of targets, though, again. But will he get the same amount
James
of touchdowns?
White in standard was 11, by the way.
Yeah.
11.
Yeah, I don't see that happening again this year.
I think it's crazy. It's just literally he jumps 4 spots in half PPR and full PPR just because you're keeping track of the receptions. I don't know. James White is such a hard one for me because he was targeted a crap ton this year, but in years past, like in 2017, he was number 40 among running backs. And if that happens again, and he was targeted in the playoffs that year the same amount as he is right now. If that happens again, you're going to have a lot of fantasy owners being like, "Oh, I expected James White to be really good, and he's not. What's going on?" That is why I'm not recommending for you to draft him. Him and James Conner. It's literally like going to be Patriots running backs
Your
as
least favorite.
a void. It's like a couple years ago with the Washington Redskins and their frigging committee backfield. It's so annoying. Fantasy for the NFL, committee backfields work, but for fantasy,
they can still work.
Yeah, I guess. Not one team has successfully completed it. The Saints, sort of, and
the Bears kind of did last year.
Sort of.
Neither of them were top 10, but
yeah. But as far as James White is concerned, we have to move on. But I for Patriots running backs, I don't like them. It's not that I don't like James White. I tried to trade for him in fantasy this year. 233 fantasy points is a lot of fantasy points. And finishing in the top 10 is a good finish. Finishing in the top 11 is a good finish in standard leagues. So for James White, he was good this year, but I don't know how consistent he can stay. Number 9 on this list. Only because he did not play that many games. He got hurt like 6 times. Joe Mixon.
Your guy. Another one of your guys.
I love Joe Mixon. 221 fantasy points. He was 13th on the consistency rank. He averaged around 16 points per game and busted 42% of the time. I freaking love Joe Mixon.
I know you do.
That's it. Moving on to David Johnson. Joe Mixon is absolutely... He has all of the makings and the talent to be a top 6 or 7 running back. In fact...
I don't disagree with that.
Had he finished this year... I think he played in 14 games. Had he finished this year adding the averages in, he probably would have finished 6 or 7 on that list. Had he played the other 2 games, he only played 14 games. So Joe Mixon, to me, is a top 10 running back.
He is top 10, yeah.
He's an extremely good running back, and there's nobody on the Cincinnati Bengals. Everyone worried about Joe Mixon can take a step back. Giovanni Bernard, not Joe Mixon. Everyone worried about Giovanni Bernard stealing snaps from Joe Mixon can take a step back.
He's just a third down back.
Yeah, just a third down back. Joe Mixon is the clear number 1. If he stays healthy and he stays on the field, nothing has changed in Cincinnati. They're 2 ginormous ifs.
He's missed 2 games in each of his first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
I do love Joe Mixon just like you do. The injuries are a little bit of a concern.
Like,
but
he can catch, he can run, he can block, he can do.
Oh yeah, he's got all the tools.
Joe Mixon.
I mean, I'm a fan of Joe Mixon too. Right now, he's going in the 2nd round. I think he's going let's see, 14th overall.
Yeah.
Or no, sorry, 16th overall. Is that a good spot for him, you think?
Yeah, based on where he finished last year. I mean, I think he could finish top 6 next year. But
Do you?
I think the concern is, like we said, the injuries.
Yeah.
I think he's extremely injury prone.
When he's healthy, if he plays a full 16-game season, I think he will be a top 8 running back in fantasy at least.
Yeah. I mean, being right around 15 is really good. That's kind of where, you get
Yikes.
8. Yeah.
I almost just killed my water bottle, if that's possible.
It's true. If he had, I think, 8 guys that are going in the first round ahead of him, he's going right around where he should be. I really do like Joe Mixon, but you have to start asking the question of, like, Joe Mixon or Nick Chubb.
And I'll ask you a question shortly.
Okay.
But I'll wait a few minutes and you'll see why.
Okay. Joe Mixon or Nick Chubb?
I'm going to go Joe Mixon.
Okay.
I think it's very close, though. I think they're both in the same.
Why is it?
The only reason I say Joe Mixon is because Kareem Hunt is on the Browns. That's the difference, I think, between the two.
If he wasn't?
I'd probably say Nick Chubb because the offense is better.
Now, I think he's in,
but I think they're very, those two are very close. You could go either way with those guys.
Because if you go through the list, I'd take Nick Chubb, David Johnson, James Conner, Gordon, Bell, Gurley, McCaffrey, Kamara, Elliott, and Barkley all ahead of Joe Mixon. I would not take Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, Marlon Mack, or Aaron Jones ahead of him.
You have him essentially.
So I have him essentially where that is. I like Joe Mixon. I actually had him a little bit higher in my rankings at the end of the season. I always have liked Joe Mixon, but I think with the injuries, that's the biggest, like, when you're drafting and you're looking at your fantasy team, you have to consider injuries. As much as I love Melvin Gordon, you have to consider that he can't stay on the field for a full season. And you have to say, okay, what games is he going to miss? Is it going to affect me? Does he consistently miss the postseason? Like, all these questions need to come into account. You have the same problems with James Conner. James Conner this year got hurt. Le'Veon Bell constantly gets hurt. Guys who have stayed on the field for entire seasons, Barkley, Elliott, Kamara, McCaffrey, Gurley. Those guys stay on the field. They do what they need to do, and they get the job done. And it's like, if you're injury prone, you're going to be down there on that list. I mean, if you list guys, Nick Chubb on. Joe Mixon on. Joe Mixon, injury problems. Dalvin Cook, injury problems. Leonard Fournette, injury problems. Marlon Mack, injury problems. Aaron Jones has a bad coach. You know what I mean? Like, or had a bad coach. Yeah. So when you go down this list, though, I just think that if you're in the second or third round as a running back, all those guys are talented. They just can't stay on the field. And I think that Joe Mixon is if Joe Mixon stays on the field for 16 games, he's in
sort of
the
similar
Gurley,
to
McCaffrey, Kamara, Elliott, Barkley crowd. But he's just not. He's not that right now because he gets hurt constantly.
I think he would be a little bit behind that, but I do get your point, and I get what you're saying.
No. Like, I would, building my super team, make him.
Oh,
building my super team, I'd make him my RB2.
Your team is, let's see, you got Gurley, you got Zeke,
you
got Joe Mixon. Your bench consists of running backs.
Yep, all running backs.
The first receiver you take is in the 6th round.
It's true.
The first quarterback you take is in the 14th round, and you don't draft a tight end.
I take a kicker in the 18th round in a 15 position team.
Yeah, you have like 10 running backs on your roster.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't hate
it. David Johnson is next on this list. He finished 10. Considering how bad we all thought he did this year, David Johnson finishing 10 is not bad. He had 221 fantasy points. He busted 43% of the time, which is something to watch out for. But when you look at David Johnson this year, and you look at David Johnson in the next, in the coming years, I didn't realize how young until I looked this up. I've said this before. I did not realize how young David Johnson was.
You thought he was like an old man.
I thought he was like in the middle of his career. And then when
he is kind of in the middle of his career, but
I mean, like, post-middle.
Yeah.
Like,
I got you.
30s. 30, end. So I thought David Johnson was older, though. And when I looked at his numbers, and then I looked at how old he was, I was like, wait a minute. This guy can only get better because he's still extremely young. And to me, my concern with David Johnson is this. We don't know what he's going to look like in this new offense. Now, from what we know about the Cliff Kingsbury offense is that it's, and when he coached, I forgot what school it was. Was it Texas Tech? I can't remember. I think it was Texas Tech.
Yes.
When he coached there,
Texas A&M, I think.
Maybe, I don't know. But when he coached in college, his offenses were always like top 5 in the country. Mm-hmm. If that translates to the NFL, and there's more creative play calling, there's better things going on with that offense, David Johnson will definitely be involved at an extremely high level. For a year that we thought he sucked, he came out and he played top 10 finish anyway.
Right.
Like I said, my concern with David Johnson is that he's only been a top 5 running back once in his entire career. And so for me, and I think that's over 4 seasons. Is that right? Something like that.
Yeah, 4 seasons.
So David Johnson, to me, he's only done it once. So we have to see him do it multiple years, finishing in the top 5. I think to solidify him as a top player. I've talked about this before. I think he can finish in the top 3. I think he could finish in the top 3 this year, definitely. It just depends on how they utilize him, which they will utilize him heavily in the Cliff Kingsbury offense.
So David Johnson, I do agree with the Cliff Kingsbury offense thing. He was Texas Tech, by the way.
Okay.
Here's the thing with David Johnson.
Yeah.
You said he's finished in the top 5 once.
Yep.
Let's look back. Last year, legitimately did not finish in the top 5.
Yep.
Had a kind of poor season. However, the whole offense stunk. Yep. The coach didn't know what he was doing. Mm-hmm. Rookie quarterback. You can kind of give him an excuse. The year before that, he played 1 game.
Yeah, hand injury.
Right. The year before that, his second season in the league, he was the top 5 running back. He was insane. Had a great year. And then the year before that was a rookie.
Yeah.
So I can see kind of the hype around David Johnson. And people forget, a lot of people had him going number 1 last year.
Oh, yeah.
And the top 3, definitely.
Me and you both had this conversation before our draft. We were like, we're not drafting David Johnson.
Right. Yeah.
And we both said it was because A, terrible offensive line for the Arizona Cardinals. B, you have a rookie quarterback. And C, he's coming back from an injury.
Yep. But where did he go in our draft?
He ended at 3.
Yep. He was the 3rd overall pick. He was still very high.
And if you drafted him 3rd, this is why the hate for David Johnson for a lot of people has happened. And it's because
he destroyed some teams.
He destroyed some teams. Yeah, he was still an RB1, but he was like when you're drafting an RB1 at the beginning of the draft, you're expecting to get Barkley, Elliott, Todd Gurley, like those big running backs. And you got David Johnson, and David Johnson finished with 221 fantasy points. He didn't even finish with the 300s.
Right. But considering his circumstances, that wasn't the worst thing in the world.
No, it wasn't. I mean, the unenthusiastic play calling was,
right,
unimaginative.
Now with a better coach, slightly better offense, we'll see. He might still have a rookie quarterback, depending on what's going to happen. However, I think the situation as a whole definitely improved a little bit. He's right now going to go 14 in half PPR leagues, 14th overall.
Yeah.
I think that's a good pick. I think he could be a borderline top 5 running back next year, or top 6.
This is where I'm looking at David Johnson as I haven't decided how I'm personally going to draft this year in terms of we have to see the full ADP from, multiple sources. We have to see the full ADP as it's developed. Probably around August, I'll have a better picture of what I'm personally going to do in our league and in all my leagues generally. But in terms of David Johnson being around 14 or 15 right now, I could probably see that going up a little bit as the season draws in. Yeah, you think it's still a little
fatigue of what we were saying earlier?
I think it was still a little bit of a fatigue. I think he'll go up. But if he hovers around that spot, I'm having a hard time right now because I like to draft my wide receiver in the second round. I like to get the guy that will lead my wide receiver core. And I'm starting to lean away from that and go towards David Johnson a little bit because I'll say if I'm 6 or 7, I'll draft Melvin Gordon, or I'll draft Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara, one of those guys if they fall to me at 6.
Yeah, you'll get one of those guys.
I would get one of those guys, and because I'm early second, I would say, okay, I'm going to grab David Johnson. So then you got a 1-2 punch at your running back position, and you can think about wide receiver. Listen to me right now. The wide receiver position is so deep. I'm every single day I break down wide receivers, and I look at them, and I'm like, you could literally draft a clutch good wide receiver in the 7th or 8th round. You could draft 3 of them if you wanted to. Don't waste your pick on a high-end wide receiver that you think is going to break out.
I think A.J. Green could be a WR1.
Yeah, big time.
He's going right now the last pick of the 3rd round.
Yeah, don't. To me, I mean, I always looked at A.J. Green as a wide receiver 1, but that's a guy that you could definitely go at in the 3rd round. And it could construct your team where you have 2 big-time running backs and then a big-time wide receiver, and you're already like, you know, people in your league are like, they're drafting friggin' Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins in the first 2 rounds, and then they're looking at your team like, I got the big wide receivers. I'm like, who cares?
And then their RB1 is Sony Michel.
Yeah.
Or Devontae Freeman.
It's like the running backs are, in half PPR and standard leagues, running backs are so, even in full PPR leagues, running backs are so thin, and you have to get a good one like early. And if you can get multiple
especially
good ones
the first round, I think once you get past running back number 6, I think then there's a few guys left that are like Joe Mixon, David Johnson. I think Leonard Fournette falls in that category. But then after that, it does kind of get pretty thin.
Yeah, and it's like, for me, if you nail down David Johnson and like a Melvin Gordon type player in your first 2 rounds, you're having a good draft. And if David Johnson busts, I apologize. Let's move on to number 4, Kareem Hunt. Consistency rank last year of 5. Average points per game, 20. He busted 18% of the time. Kareem Hunt, when he was on the field, the fact that he finished 11, I believe it's 11, in half PPR, and he missed like
the last 4 games?
6 games of the season.
Oh, really?
I think it was like 6 games. Yeah. He was absolutely crazy. Yeah, no, Kareem Hunt finished 11. He played 11 games, so he didn't play in 5.
Wow. How many points did he finish with?
Half he finished PPR? With 217 half PPR points.
That's insane.
Now, when you look, this is why people are like, Kareem Hunt, oh my God, he's the second running back behind Nick Chubb. Is he really, though?
Oh.
I don't like that hot take, and I'll put it off to the side, but
he is.
He is the second running back. Unfortunately, in that offense, I don't know how they're going to utilize him.
Won't be
don't even
year.
Ask me. Wait till the preseason when I watch.
They're going to try to do what the Saints did, I think, when
they're going to attempt. Kareem Hunt was so good, though. He was so good last year. And I think a lot of people who didn't have them on their fantasy team, he went under the radar. It was like kind of like a...
Yeah,
it was kind of like Kareem Hunt's here. He, honest to God, the first half of the season was I think he was the second best running back in fantasy.
Yeah,
and people didn't even realize
finished
it.
top 5 definitely.
He would have finished top 5 most definitely. Like until I think in week 11 he was like the 4th best running back in half PPR or something like that. And you get to that point in the year and it was like people were just not even talking about Kareem Hunt until obviously the tape came out. But I think for me, you got a consistent running back who averages 20 points a game, who busted only 18% of the games he played. He was consistent. He was good. The problem is that he's in Cleveland sitting behind Nick Chubb, and he's on an 8-game suspension. So next year, I think its ADP is in the 10th round is where I'm guessing that is. I thought it was last time I looked, but that was like weeks ago.
I'm looking for him right now.
So... I don't know. I mean, he's a guy that the question that you have to ask yourself, is he worth drafting?
Yeah, I think he's worth a draft pick.
It just depends.
Where is he going?
To me, it depends on where he's going.
Right now, he's currently going in the 11th round.
Yeah. And so for me...
Do you pick him in the 11th round?
And is he worth... This is where
late 11th round.
This is where the is he worth it question comes in, though. Is he worth it to sit on your bench for 8 weeks not knowing what he's going to be in the Cleveland Browns offense?
Because I was just going to say, when he comes back, what is he going to be? Are you willing to take a guy in the 11th round to sit on your
Yeah.
bench for 8 weeks and then come back and be the backup running back on a team?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm willing to do that.
That's why I think preseason does kind of matter.
If you watch film enough,
You're gonna have to listen carefully and kind of hopefully trust the judgment of the Browns coaching staff too. if they're gonna be like, well, we plan on using Kareem Hunt a lot.
yeah,
Then it becomes a situation where it's like he's worth an 11th round pick because you take him in the 11th round, and he comes back as at least a flex.
right,
Gets like 10 carries a game. Nick Chubb gets like 15 to 20.
right.
And they split it with Chubb gets more, but Hunt is still very much involved. I think if they try to do what the Saints did, let's look at last year. Mark Ingram was suspended for 4 games, correct? The first 4 games of the year?
Yes,
I believe it was 4. He came back and was kind of an RB2, right?
right.
A low-end RB2. I think I could see that with Hunt possibly, but now you're missing 8 games.
Yeah,
So
I
I
think
think if you're in the 11th round and you're at the end of the 11th round,
maybe take a flyer. I don't know.
yeah, depending on how your team
I don't even know if I want to take a flyer though, because there are guys. Believe it or not, there's guys in the 11th round that would be interesting to take.
Do you take Deion Lewis over him?
No,
Do you take Gus Edwards over him? Do you take Latavius Murray over him?
no,
Mike Davis?
maybe.
Jamal Williams?
Who,
Packers running back.
Yeah, I know who he is.
I just had to confirm.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking him over any of those guys. I mean,
You're not taking Hunt over any of those guys.
I'm not taking any of those guys over Hunt.
Okay.
Sorry.
So he's worth an 11th round pick.
Yeah,
Is
I
what
mean,
we've come
to
to
me,
come to the conclusion.
I guess. I don't know. I just don't know if you're in a league with a deeper bench, like you get 6, 7, 8 spots.
Then yeah. I think that changes.
Grab them and stash them. If you're in a league where you have an IR or a
reserve spot,
a reserve spot where you have to drop somebody when the season starts, you grab Kareem Hunt, stick him there. But if you don't, and you're in a 5 bench, like you're in a 5 bench spot league, or a 6 bench spot league, like normal people, like standard leagues, you're on NFL.com playing on the NFL managed leagues.
yeah.
And you're a lame-o, go with Kareem Hunt and stick him on your bench. That's not the best idea because there's a lot of guys on the waiver wire that you're going to want to grab. I tried to ride out that Le'Veon Bell storm as long as I could, and I'll tell you right now, it hurt having Le'Veon Bell sit on my bench and be a waste of time.
On the waiver wire.
I did. And it honestly sucked because it was like, I wanted to pick up certain players, and certain players were taken off the waiver wire ahead of me. Like there was when Mitch Trubisky was going off those couple of weeks, I needed a quarterback, and I was trying to go after Mitch Trubisky, and somebody else got him before me because I didn't want to drop somebody on my bench. Sometimes you got to take that risk. But with Kareem Hunt, to me, unfortunately, I don't think he's worth the risk. I don't think he's worth drafting and waiting for 8 weeks. And who knows, maybe I'll change my mind. But I don't think he's worth drafting because what is he going to be when he comes back? And that's even if you look at the preseason film and you're like, oh, well, this is what he's going to be. Is he actually going to be that? If Nick Chubb comes out and has the best 8 weeks of his life, Kareem Hunt's not going to play that much. And it's just basically you're going to get reacclimated with the game of football for a couple of weeks, and then you're gonna maybe play in the postseason and be done, and then you'll go to another team, and it'll be the hottest running back to go out the free agent market.
Willing to wait 8 weeks for a guy who could potentially be a flex?
No.
Right. I think that's what it comes down to.
That's where I'm
now. What if you're weak at running back? Or you got a strong 1-2.
If you get to round 11 and you're weak at running back,
all right. Let's say
take the risk.
Let's say you weren't listening to our podcast and you're a big wide receiver guy.
You drafted Devontae Adams and you drafted Antonio Brown in the first 2 rounds.
You got Sony Michel's
and
your
then you
RB1.
got AJ Green in the 3rd round too. So you have 3 wide receivers and you forgot about your running back position. Oh crap! I got 2 running backs.
Or even if you have 2 good running backs, but you don't have a third. And you're sitting there with an average wide receiver at your flex spot, and you're like, man, I think I could improve that. And you're sitting in round 11, and you see Kareem Hunt's on the board. Then do you take a flyer?
Yeah, but that's not where we're gonna be.
Right.
Make
that's
that
true.
promise. We got to move on really quickly. We have 4 more running backs to get to. We're going to do them very fast because we've run out of time. But Phillip Lindsay, Denver Broncos, 205 fantasy points. I've been talking about this guy recently on Twitter a little bit, or not about Phillip Lindsay, but I think I did a poll. Did we do a poll on our Twitter page with Phillip Lindsay, or was that? Oh, yeah, it was. So let me pull up the poll and tell you exactly what the results were.
By the way, if you guys don't follow us on Twitter, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Go follow us on Twitter and vote in those polls, okay? So
Clutch.
yeah.
So in the poll, it finished with 46% of people said no to drafting Phillip Lindsay next year. 29% yes. And 25% said bring on Royce Freeman. So that means that 71% of people said they will not be drafting Phillip Lindsay this year. What do you think of that?
That's interesting to me. I don't necessarily hate that either because I'm not the biggest Phillip Lindsay fan either. But if people feel that way, you think he's going to drop in drafts?
Yeah.
And if he drops in drafts, then do you become interested in him?
No.
So you're okay. So you're one of the people that's
I'm out.
Completely out on him.
I like Royce Freeman, but I'm not going to buy that train until...
I'm not the biggest Phillip Lindsay fan, but let me just give you a list of running backs going around his spot. Devontae Freeman. Phillip Lindsay or Devontae Freeman over him. Okay. Aaron Jones or Phillip Lindsay?
I'd take Aaron Jones.
Ooh. Marlon Mack, Phillip Lindsay?
I would take Marlon Mack.
Okay. Derrick Henry?
I would take Derrick Henry.
Wow. Kerryon Johnson?
No, not Kerryon.
Okay, so that's the list.
You have the winner.
All those guys
You found a winner. I'm not taking Kerryon Johnson.
And then Damian Williams, Chiefs running back?
No. Oh, God, no. He should be not even on the board.
Mark Ingram?
No.
Okay, so we kind of found a spot.
Yeah, you know what? I'd take Mark Ingram.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
Yeah,
we'll
you know
go.
what? I'll change
Darius
my mind.
Geis?
No.
Chris Carson?
No.
Okay, so you essentially have him being a fit right now. So most of those guys I said are going in the 4th round, including Phillip Lindsay.
Yep.
So you would say no to him essentially in the 4th round, but so you have him as kind of a 5th round pick?
I'm not drafting Phillip Lindsay. Period.
Or if he falls, you draft him, then trade him.
Probably. Yeah, but that's not.
I think
gonna
that's
happen.
a better way.
I don't think
putting
he's
it.
gonna fall. I don't think he's gonna fall. Now, the reason why I don't like Phillip Lindsay is because he's the prototypical guy to come out as an undrafted free agent. Royce Freeman was the first overall pick. Not first overall. He's a first round pick.
He was a first round pick, really.
Or a second round pick.
I think he was a second round pick. I'm gonna double check that.
But he was a high round draft selection for the Denver Broncos, and he's the guy that they want to start moving forward. I think that's the guy they want to put their team around. He was a 3rd round pick. But he's the guy that they want to put their team around. They drafted him. They didn't draft Phillip Lindsay. They signed draft.
It's not like
they signed
Royce Freeman played bad either.
No, it's not like Royce Freeman played bad. If you look at the second half of the season numbers for Phillip Lindsay, he finished as an RB3.
Really?
Yeah.
So that is the biggest concern, I think.
He had a really good 10 to 12 weeks in the season, and then towards the end he started to fall off a little bit. And so my concern with Phillip Lindsay is that, and he has his bust percentage and his consistency rank was 16. He busted 47% of the time. Phillip Lindsay is a player who I'm scared of drafting because every year we get a couple of running backs that break out. Those number 2 running backs, always be on the lookout for those number 2 running backs that are sitting behind a starter and steal their job. This is why I'm talking about like Jalen Samuels and James Conner lately, because Jalen Samuels might be that guy to jump out and shock everyone. I don't know if that's the case. I can't predict the future, but I can tell you what I know statistically about certain players, and there's going to be guys next year guaranteed that are number 2 running backs that are going to jump ahead and take a starting guy's job. That's what Phillip Lindsay did with Royce Freeman. Prototypically, those guys go out. They have a good year. They get hyped up. They have this big season. Everyone's like, oh my God, Phillip Lindsay's the best. Everyone drafts him in the 4th, 5th round, What happens? Phillip Lindsay busts. And then everyone's like, what I look at guys like Trent Richardson. Look at guys like Peyton Hillis. You remember these clowns?
Oh, God.
One good year, and then they busted. Phillip Lindsay.
You think he's in that category?
To me, he's in that category. And I think...
I don't know what to think of Phillip Lindsay, honestly.
Yeah. No, and when you look at like the end of the season, he wasn't that great. They believe in Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman's not that bad of a running back, and he can catch. So...
Phillip Lindsay, though, had 5.4 yards per carry last year. That is good.
Whoopity-doo-dah.
That's good. That's legit.
It's good, but Phillip Lindsay's not going to do that this year.
I don't think he will necessarily either, but I'm not 100% convinced.
Trust me when I say they like Royce Freeman.
I'm not 100%. Oh, I know you like Royce Freeman.
I like Royce Freeman, and so does the Denver Broncos.
I don't... I do. I'm leaning towards you. I stay away from Phillip Lindsay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I feel as strongly as you do about it, though.
Yeah, I'm not drafting. There's certain guys that I put on my buyer beware, do not draft list, and Phillip Lindsay is one of them.
Okay.
Like
With
there
are
guys that are high in the draft, like Tyreek Hill, who I don't like for fantasy purpose because they bust a lot. But there are players that I'll draft because I want to trade away. What can I actually get? If I waste a 5th-round pick on Phillip Lindsay, what can I actually get for Phillip Lindsay in a trade? Nothing that's going to get me a flex. Who's going to buy him? You saw the poll results. Who's going to buy him?
Well,
I'm avoiding Phillip Lindsay. Bye-bye, Phillip Lindsay.
Trust me. In our league, and I'm sure in many leagues, people are willing to buy a lot of people that you wouldn't expect them to. So
yeah. We got to move on. Tarik Cohen, Chicago Bears running back, 198 fantasy points. He was finished 18th on the consistency rank, 50% of the time busting, and only averaged 13 points per game. Cohen was good. He was a decent flex if you had him. He's one of those guys that I like, but I'm not sure about yet. I think he'll have a decent. I'm kind of confused because
he's gonna
Mike Davis is the backup running back right now.
But he's also the first down back.
He's also the first down back, which is weird. Yeah, but so Cohen is going to come in on passing downs, and he's going to run the football probably a majority of the time. So with the loss of Jordan Howard, I would say Tarik Cohen gets a boost from that. He finished as the
12th running back?
13th running back. 13th running back. And so I think Cohen could finish maybe a little bit higher than that next year. But I would probably definitely put him in the mid RB2 range. And he'll probably stay right around where he is right now. I don't see any jumps. He's a really small running back who can't handle a workhorse load.
Which is why they brought in Mike Davis. However, I don't think that matters too much in the role that he's playing in.
Yeah.
Like they're not gonna want him to get 20 carries a night.
No.
He's gonna get 10 to 15 carries, but he's also gonna play a James White role in the offense where he's gonna get a lot of catches too.
Yeah.
I think the combination of the two, I do like Tarik Cohen. I think especially after the Jordan Howard trade. I don't know. I think right now he's going the last pick in the 5th round, so that's not a bad spot. Take him early 6th. I think that's a good spot.
High. It's too high.
I think 5th round is too high. I don't think the 6th round is.
Yeah, 6th round's not bad. These are guys like Tarik Cohen and Phillip Lindsay are two guys that I don't want to draft relying on them as weekly starters. And that's just me being a pompous super team builder.
I think in standard leagues, I don't disagree with you.
But for half PPR, Cohen's pretty good. I mean, he was good for points of the season, but I don't like his inconsistency. And I think that is kind of the hardest part. But we got to move on. Derrick Henry, Tennessee Titans, 193 fantasy points.
Interesting guy.
He busted 69% of the time and had his consistency rank of 34. If you take out the crap that happened over the course of the entire season and just give us week 15 and 16, Derrick Henry was a freaking beast. 44 points and 30 points. He was crazy. Right now, the Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator has said, hey, listen, we're going to build around Derrick Henry. We're going to run it with him. We're going to build it around him. They have figured out how to use Derrick Henry, and they are going to use him as much as they possibly can next year. Does that make you want to draft him, or is that just overhyping a running back
could overhype him, but that does kind of make me want to draft him.
I mean, if they want to build here's the problem. Derrick Henry can very well go out and do 5 yards a carry and be a beast running back, finish in the top 10, and we're all like, yeah, Derrick Henry, that's a great 6th-round draft pick, 6th-round draft pick. Yeah, awesome. Or Derrick Henry could go out, play 7 games, and get 2.5 yards to carry, and they're like, crap, we just completely screwed this up.
Yeah.
That's Derrick Henry for you. He is not going to give you the consistency that you were looking for. Yeah, awesome. He played, I think those 2 playoff games, whatever team had him, if they were in the playoffs, they were like, oh my gosh, I just got a stud. They're overhyping him right now. I think Derrick Henry is completely overhyped. And as good as he was over the course of the end of the season, he is just, I don't know if he can hold that up for an entire year.
So, the last thing you said I don't disagree with. Where I don't know if he can hold it up for a whole year. But like Derrick Henry, I think he struggled obviously for most of the season, and typically running backs that do that have like a high percentage of being trash, and then a very small percentage of
high percentage of being trash.
Yes, and a low percentage of actually being good, like Derrick Henry was last year. I typically stay away with. But with Derrick Henry, the thing is, he sucked for the whole year. Was it because he sucked, or was it because the Titans had no idea what they were doing?
They had no idea what they were doing.
And then week 15 happens, and they're at this point they run out of ideas, and they're just like, let's just give Derrick Henry the ball. Let's just see what he does. And he just explodes. And then they do the same thing the next week. He explodes again. And did they realize that something clicked? Yeah. Which, if that is the case, and you believe that, then yeah, Derrick Henry should be a guy you draft. Is he getting overhyped? Yeah, I think he is a little bit, because obviously he had 44 fantasy points in the game. Like he dominated those last 2 weeks. I don't think he's going to be that good. But yeah, I mean, if you're sitting in the 5th round and Derrick Henry's there, I'm taking him.
From week 13 to 17, he was the number 1 running back in fantasy. With
I'm taking him in the 5th round. 100%.
I haven't decided whether to put Derrick Henry on my do not draft list or
with the Patriots running backs.
Get right now
Phillip
list.
Lindsay.
Yeah. Patriots running backs, Derrick Henry. And then Phillip Lindsay. I have no idea with Derrick Henry. He could turn out to be a great player. And, you'll look at the end of last season and be like, okay, this is a guy we're definitely getting. Or he could be a complete and utter trash can. So I think it's just, for me, I like to avoid guys that I ask questions on. I know I don't have to ask any questions about Kareem Hunt or Joe Mixon or David Johnson.
Well, you do with Kareem Hunt, but
yeah, with Kareem Hunt, there's a few questions. Phillip Lindsay, you're like, all right, well, who's the actual starter? Tarik Cohen, you're like, can he be a workhorse? Derrick Henry, is he going to be consistent? Like those are guys that I just, are they, where they finish this year, are they going to finish again? That's the question you got to ask yourself with the top players.
I think you can, out of those 3 guys though that you just brought up, Derrick Henry's yes to me.
Okay.
Phillip Lindsay, I don't know. Tarik Cohen, I don't know.
Because this list is going to change. It's going to change. The top 15 is going to change.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if Derrick Henry.
We'll see how overhyped he gets.
If he ends up like a 4th or a 3rd round pick, I'm like, get the hell out of here.
If he is a 3rd round pick, that changes things, I think.
Yeah.
If he stays as a 5th round pick, I think that opens up a little more doors to say, like, yeah, I can take him here, put him at my flex spot, and be confident.
Yeah. Let's move on to Chris Carson, Seattle Seahawks running back, 191 fantasy points. Now, his consistency rank was 8.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
So for a guy finishing at 15, that's pretty good. 13.5 points per game, busted 28% of the time. Chris Carson, he's another player on my do not draft list.
Oh my gosh, that's like half these. So that just proves, to your point, of how much and how important it is for you personally, to take running backs early, because we're now getting in that like 10 to 15 range of top running backs, and you're saying stay away from these guys.
Yeah, for Chris Carson, because this list 10 to 15, 10 to 20 changes every single year. Like your top 6, top 7, top 8, you know the general names that are going to be there and you know who to take. For the top 10 to 20, that's going to change. Do you think Tarik Cohen, Derrick Henry, Phillip Lindsay, and James White are going to finish in that range?
Yeah.
Do you think Kareem Hunt is actually going to be able? He's not going to be finishing anywhere near that because he's only playing half a year. But for guys like that and Chris Carson, where are you going to get Chris Carson? The problem with Chris Carson specifically for me is that they have Rashad Penny. Chris Carson's not the guy.
That is a concern.
Chris Carson's not the guy in Seattle. Rashad Penny is. Chris Carson will start as the number 1 back. People will be like, "Oh my God, Chris Carson won me a couple games at the end of the season." Maybe for you, fantasy championship, and they're gonna be like, "I like Chris Carson a lot. He helped me." Fantasy football is similar to the NFL. It's like, "What have you done for me lately?" What he did for you lately is help you win a fantasy championship for you, so you're gonna like him. Rashad Penny is another running back. I don't know if you can consider him a sleeper or not, but him and Jalen Samuels are 2 guys on my sleeper list. Jalen Samuels is like 5, but I would put Rashad Penny pretty high because Rashad Penny is their guy. Like, he is their guy. And Chris Carson is not going to be getting in the way of that. You know what I mean? For Rashad Penny, I think there is a situation where he could break out, but also Seattle's backfield is similar to the New England Patriots where you don't even know who's going to play. Now, it's a good thing Mike Davis left. That gets rid of another running back that clouds the backfield. But for me, Chris Carson is not going to get the plurality. He'll probably get a majority of the snaps, but he's not going to get a lot of the majority. It'll probably be like a 55-45 split or something like that.
Okay. So I can see that happening. And I think they took was Rashad Penny a first-round pick last year?
I'll look it up right now.
I'm pretty sure he was. So if you invest that much into a guy, they're going to want to use him. I don't disagree with that. The thing I do like about Chris Carson, though,
he was pick 127.
So he was a first-round pick. So they are going to use him.
First round, 27th.
I do agree with you. Rashad Penny should be a sleeper on boards. Mm-hmm. He's going to go up. And you know how you said earlier?
You know what his player comparison is?
Who?
Melvin Gordon.
That's pretty funny. He is going to go up, obviously. But I like Chris Carson because the Seahawks run the ball more than any other team in football.
Yeah.
They just got rid of Mike Davis. They're going to go with a 2-man group. And I know you hate this, but it's the modern NFL. Teams use 2 running backs. And for the Seahawks, I think you said the only situations you've ever seen succeed is the Saints fantasy-wise. They have 2 successful running backs. I think this year you could see another one. I think there's a really good chance Chris Carson and Rashad Penny succeed.
Disagree.
Because I think they're going to run the ball more than any other team again. I don't think that changes.
Yeah.
Actually, I think the Ravens might because Lamar Jackson's their quarterback, but they're still going to run the ball a lot regardless.
Yeah.
One of those guys is obviously going to take over. You think it's Rashad Penny.
I think it's Rashad Penny.
It might be. You're right. It's tough. I'm trying to convince myself because I do.
I'm telling you,
I do like Chris Carson.
It's the "what have you done for me lately" NFL mindset.
Yeah,
you're like, he won me a fantasy championship, so I love Chris Carson. But the reality is, Rashad Penny is their first round pick.
I 100% agree with you that Rashad Penny's gonna get more.
I almost wish that Chris Carson walked or something.
So let's say Mike. So you take what Mike Davis did. His 10 carries a game, about 5 to 10 carries, and you give that all to Penny. Carson's still getting 15 carries a game, which is all he needed.
Yeah.
I could honestly see them both getting 15 carries and having 30 carries.
I mean, they'll probably split the snaps in the backfield. But if you're asking me which running back is better, it's Rashad Penny. If you're asking which running back they want to use, it's Rashad Penny. I would not be friggin' surprised if game 1, Rashad Penny gets 60% of the snaps, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, why isn't Chris Carson playing good?" And then they wasted, a 6th-round draft choice on him?
Yeah, that is not too bad.
So for me, though, I look at Chris Carson, as much as people want to like him, as much as he finished in the top 15, right? I see him as a very, very low-end RB2, high-end RB3. And if that doesn't happen and he ends up being really good, then good for everyone. But he's one of those guys that it's going to I think he's going to he's either One of two things is going to happen with Chris Carson. He's either going to dominate, steal the role away from Rashad Penny, and that's the guy they're going to go with, or he's going to collapse, and they're not even going to start him.
See, I don't know about that because I think they're going to use both guys.
I don't think they're going to use both guys.
They used 3 guys last year. They used 3 running backs. You don't think they'll use 2? One of those guys left, so now they're both going to get a lot of carries.
Until the end of last year, right? Until the end of last year, in the last couple weeks where Chris Carson kind of dominated, Chris Carson was getting a majority of the snaps at the end of the season, a majority of them. It wasn't like a split backfield. It wasn't like Rashad Penny was getting. Chris Carson was dominating the backfield at the end of the season. During the rest of the season where Chris Carson wasn't dominating, the rest of that season, first 12 to 14 weeks of the season, you saw that 2-3 man backfield. Did it look good fantasy-wise? No,
it didn't.
So for me, I'm avoiding Chris Carson if it's a 2-person backfield. If it's Rashad Penny, I'm not saying jump out the, roll up the friggin' wagon and sign up for Rashad Penny. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying Chris Carson and Rashad Penny are 2 guys that are going to have to, what's most likely going to happen is what you said. They're going to split snaps. And if they split snaps, then it's going to end up being a bad fantasy situation for people. You're going to get inconsistent play. You're going to get...
you will get inconsistent play.
Inconsistent...
I just think if any team's going to split a backfield and have it work,
yeah,
the Seahawks are one of those teams because they run the ball a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
I don't think they're going to run the ball as much as people think next year.
Okay.
Because that's a new trend, and I don't know if that's a trend that's going to stay. Now, that's not me talking from, understanding or inside sources that talk to Pete Carroll. I have no idea. But as far as Chris Carson, I mean, like I said, this is another guy with the questions surrounding him. Derrick Henry, questions. Chris Carson, questions. Tarik Cohen, questions. Phillip Lindsay, questions. Been through this. I'm avoiding guys with question marks. And, I like some people. I'm hoping to flesh this out in the first in the first 5 rounds, figure out my running back position so I can take guys who I think are sleepers instead of taking guys that I think are going to be busts. Why am I going to sit here and waste a draft pick on Derrick Henry when he's never proved to me that he can finish in the top 10? Why am I going to waste a draft pick on a guy who can't be a workhorse back in Tarik Cohen? Why am I going to waste a pick on an undrafted rookie from last year who happened to break out, who probably is going to bust again? And why would I waste it on a guy who we don't even know is going to lead the backfield in Chris Carson?
Because those are all the guys there in the 4th round.
I'm not going to draft, though. I'm going to draft a wide receiver. Go get me a wide receiver.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I just think it's a waste of time to. Obviously,
still one of those guys you're going to have to probably
one of those guys is probably going to work out.
I think it's Derrick Henry.
It's most likely Derrick Henry, yeah. But I think there's a lot of guys that are going to bust out from this 10 to 15 range, and a lot of people are going to draft them high, and then they're going to bust out, and they're going to sit here and either hold them on their bench or waiver wire them at the end of the season. You're going to be like, crap, why did I not take them late? So it's just. Fantasy football can be one of the most frustrating friggin' things on the face of the earth. But in the end of it...
I think what this kind of proves, again, what I said earlier, is you're going to probably want to take a running back in the 1st round. You're going to want to take one of those guys.
Yeah, I think...
Maybe even the second... And if not the 2nd round, you're going to want to take another one in the 3rd round.
I mean, if you had some guys, like James White's going to go in the 10th round, but the only real guys that could finish as RB1s next year, to me, are Joe Mixon and David Johnson. And that's...
You don't think Derrick Henry has a chance?
Derrick Henry might have a chance to break out into that area. And if Tarik Cohen...
I don't think he will, but I think he does have a chance to do that.
I think if there's any other guy on this list that probably has a chance to do it, it might even be Tarik Cohen. It just depends on how much he gets. If the Bears realize Mike Davis blows or something like that.
I think Cohen is a little different because I think of those guys that you don't like, and the guys we've talked about pretty much.
Yeah.
I think his floor is higher. I think you know what you're going to get with Cohen, I feel like, a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why I think you probably feel safer drafting him compared to, a Chris Carson, for example, who we just talked about. But I don't know if he can finish as an RB1, though. And I don't even dislike Cohen completely, but he's not going to be the guy that gets 20. Like you said, the workhorse.
Yeah,
you know
he's not going to be the workhorse. It's hard. It's hard when you're looking at some of these later backs. You really have to dissect whether or not they're going to be successes next year. And like I said, when I look at Phillip Lindsay and I look at Chris Carson, they drafted somebody. They drafted somebody to fill that role.
The thing that gets me with Carson, and I want to believe in Carson, but when you said this, it does hurt a little bit. They took Penny in the first round.
First round pick 27.
They have to use him.
Yep.
They have to use him.
Like
a
people
lot.
can argue on the what is it, Royce Freeman train, of like he's a third round pick. So I mean, if Phillip Lindsay ends up working out, you don't have to use Royce Freeman. You can trade him or get rid of him.
Because you can just theoretically say,
or you can just hold him as the third down back or something.
You used a third round pick on a running back, Royce Freeman,
and he didn't work out.
But you got an undrafted guy in Phillip Lindsay, so the two of them, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
you
right.
still got a good running back.
So,
in the
but
draft.
with Chris Carson and Rashad Penny's your first round pick. You know what I mean? Like that's the guy that you are intentionally.
You want him to be the next Marshawn Lynch.
Right. So that's where you got to look at Chris Carson and be like that is the biggest reason why you're talking about running backs break out in second years. You know what I mean? Todd Gurley, he broke out in his first year and then he blew in his second year. In his third year he was good, but a lot of running backs break out in their second year. And I think Rashad Penny could be one of those guys. Like he's one of those guys on my sleeper list that people are going to be like, all right, well, I'm not sure about. And a lot of people are, you're making some of the fantasy, crazy fantasy people are going to be like, Rashad Penny's not a freaking sleeper. Are you kidding me? Shut up. He's a 9th round draft choice right now. So if you're talking about getting a running back in the 9th round who could break out next year and finish in the top 15, I'm looking at Rashad Penny. And I'd rather have Rashad Penny over a guy like Chris Carson.
Wow.
So
I think
it's
that's
a crazy
little much
take.
to say, but
it's a crazy take.
I
but
do
I'll
get
take
your
it.
line of thinking.
I'd rather have Rashad Penny than Chris Carson. So take a leap, Chris Carson.
Wow.
That's going to conclude our running back edition of All That Glitters. Be sure to bookmark this episode and save it for draft season in a few months. It's going to give you a little bit of a reminder of, hey, some of these guys did good, some of these guys did bad. These are the guys that you should draft.
Yeah, if you're listening to Morgan, just take 20 running backs
in the first
15 rounds.
40 rounds. Make sure you listen to next week's episode. We're going to talk about tight ends in All That Glitters and complete the series, and then we're moving on to Call It a Breakout, a new series about rookies who broke out in the 2018 season, and then we'll go over draft month.
Oh, yeah, we get them lit.
It's draft month right now. What are we talking about? It's right now.
George Kittle.
George Kittle.
At least next week.
Yeah, next week. The NFL draft is 4 weeks away or something like that. So
I'm kind of excited for it.
Yeah, let's go. So that concludes this episode of the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you follow us and like us in all the places that I said at the beginning of the episode. Subscribe, leave a review. See you next week. Fantasy Champions.
Peace out.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.